So for our handsome little guy, we're going to warm up a little bit with some loose leash walking. So I know I mentioned where a lot of times loose leash walking could be something that you start to work on, especially in the home. And also you might not always have to be on equipment. So what I mean by that, Mr. Z could be off his leash and we could just get him to start honing in and target by one side or the other. I like to sometimes get my puppies comfortable with both sides of my body because sometimes depending on what you're working on, maybe there's something yucky on the roadway, or maybe as you're practicing, maybe you want to do rally or some other types of sports down the road. Getting your puppy comfortable to be on either side of you is very beneficial. If they're only comfortable on one side, yes, then they might have it sort of be a little bit more difficult to switch sides. So with Mr. Z, I know he's getting a little bit tired, which is completely normal. He's been out working a few little skills with me. So if he's a little bit stuck and a little bit pooped out, I know we're going to work a little bit with that loose leash walk-in. So maybe we'll get him up and wiggling. If, let's say, this was too hard and he'd rather be stationary, we could go ahead and rotate and just instead work a bit with our stay behavior for a little bit and start honing in on that one. So for Mr. Z, again, I like to use my hand as a visual. This doesn't mean that always is your hand going to be there forever. So in the beginning, remember how in the beginning we use our lure to create behavior, and later we would want to fade out that lure as quickly as we can. So if in the beginning your puppy is using your hand to hone in and target, not the end of the world, but eventually your hand either goes up towards your chest or your side, or for example, what can be helpful for some folks is as your puppy hones in on the snack and you start to get more, he's like, oh, I like your treat pouch. That does look delicious. So the other option, I know he says my treat pouch looks scrumptious, is you could also, as they get more comfortable, as opposed to having your hand low, put your hand behind your back and then feed for when they're doing a great job. So this is a perfect moment. We're having some typical puppy behavior. So what I like to do is notice how he was mid kind of eating my foot or kind of going for the treat pouch. These again could be symptoms of your puppy becoming overtired. Also his jawline could be sore. Again, he is teething and working on those big boy teeth coming in slowly but surely. So if you're finding that your puppy is giving you a hard time, they're having a hard time. Oh, he lost his snack. So what you may find helpful is either redirect to something you'd prefer. So let's say he's thinking pants are delicious or me walking equals fun. One of my favorites is have a chew item, which of course he went to run and go grab it, is have a chew item available. So if you're mid-training and your puppy's like, oh my gosh, really overwhelmed, kind of tired, I just need a break, they could maybe then go and redirect their energy onto that item, or you could help them choose that item. So if let's say, for example, I'm just going to go grab Mr. Handsome. He's like, greatest day ever. I'm going to grab his little chew. He's got some zoomies, which is perfectly fine. So let's say Mr. Handsome is a bit excited. I know I'm out of camera range. I'm just going and doing a couple find its for the handsome guy. Just going to offer a little tidbit here. So when your babes are sometimes also working on other skill sets, I know I'd mentioned like, oh, we're going to work on loose leash walking. Remember to be flexible in your training plan. So even though you might have a goal set aside, like, oh my gosh, I want to do loose leash walking, or I want to work some recalls, or maybe we're going to work on focus on the handler. The trouble there is sometimes the puppy is, remember, again, part of the process too. So either sometimes your puppy might be overtired, they're not grasping the concept, maybe the environment is too stimulating. In those situations, you want to sometimes either lower your criteria and expect a little bit less out of the puppy if they're just not doing so well with that skill set. This doesn't mean you're giving up. It just means that you're setting both you and your puppy up for much better success. So let's say Mr. Handsome is enjoying this lovely chew. Remember, a great way to avoid and also help prevent resource guarding is to allow your puppy to have many different appropriate items for him to enjoy, but then make sure that throughout it you're practicing exchanging from one zone to another. So I know I had mentioned the exchange game that I had done with a previous couple students. So, but let's say my puppy's enjoying this lovely bone or he's enjoying his dinner. What a lot of folks have been told is you got to go over and be able to just take the item and show the dog who's top dog, or go over and pat them mid-chew. A lot of times when you're messing with your babe while they're enjoying something, you're actually not reinforcing that they're doing a good job. You might actually be overwhelming them and then cause the behavior you're trying to avoid, which could be resource guarding. So if you're not familiar with resource guarding, this is where your puppy or your adult dog covets an item and they're overwhelmed and they feel that they don't want to give it up at the moment. So you might even see some things that we would deem aggression, so growling, raised little lip, teeth showing. If you were to ever see something like that and you go to scold them, remember that when your dog is saying, I'm having a hard time, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or this is stressful, and you correct them, you might actually create a zero dog. So a zero dog is a dog that has been scolded for giving natural warning signals to something they're finding uncomfortable, overwhelming. This does not mean that I want your puppy to go eat the mailman or go chase down the child or go attack the other dog in the household. But if we take away warning signals for your puppy, he might think that you don't like a warning and he might go right to the bigger behavior to make himself feel safe again. So remember, dogs and puppies are this simple. They either feel safe or unsafe. When they're feeling unsafe, the F's will come out. So flight is typically the first one. They'd rather sort of scuttle away from something they find a little overwhelming or create distance. The other option, other than the flight to get out of there, would be to fidget, fawn, freeze, flight, and then of course fight. So if your puppy is feeling a little uncomfortable, yes, nice job, sir, then the problem there is you might not be actually correcting the thing you don't like. You might be suppressing the thing that we have deemed a negative behavior. So remember, dogs are amoral. So your babe does not view things as right or wrong or good or bad. He views it as he's safe or unsafe, or if I have this thing and I can keep it as a resource, I might live another day. So they're not trying to do things out of spite, out of vengeance, out of being stubborn. They're either, again, a little bit unsure about how the human world and dog world are somehow supposed to mesh fluidly. So I always remind my students, think about your puppy as a furry little exchange student that has no idea what's expected of him verbally, culturally, or physically. And that can be very helpful. He's just going off to get a little drink first. So let's say my puppy is enjoying an item. You want to think about it as if you were having the best meal of your life. And let's say someone comes over from the wait staff and grabs your plate and gives it back, grabs your plate and gives it back. You're probably not going to be the happiest, person while your meal is being interrupted. Even if they're being sweet and funny or making jokes, you're still gonna be like, oh my gosh, I'm mid-meal, leave me alone. And then also, depending on how hangry you might be, you might use your spoon, fork, or knife to poke them away. So in that situation, them coming interrupting you does not at all make you want them to come visit again. Now let's say in this scenario, you are mid-enjoying your meal, and I'm just going to reinvigorate this little snack by putting a couple little snacks on top of it. So let's say I was mid enjoying my meal and someone comes over and they're about to interrupt me, but before they do so, they hand over $1,000. So now every time I see this person come near me as I'm about to start eating, I put my utensils down because I can't wait for that $1,000 to come my way. So with your puppy, you want to get them in the habit of, while they're mid-enjoying something, you're going to be that interrupting wait staff. And while you're enjoying it, they're going to create value by adding extra goodies on top of what they're already doing. One of my other favorite ways to think about it is, imagine you were eating an ice cream cone and all your toppers are just about gone, or you've eaten them all. Then the topping person comes back on over and retops your ice cream and then goes on their merry way. So you will not be affronted as the topping person comes nearby because they've always made your ice cream that much better. So I know Mr. Handsome is not necessarily chewing on it right now, but I would practice this where here and there throughout the day, they're maybe enjoying their meal and you toss a couple delicious higher value snacks or chews or tidbits. So for example, like maybe chicken, or you got a little bit of cheese. And you would go ahead and nonchalantly walk by and you'd toss the items in and around their little zone. So this is also sometimes like the approach, and then you'd feed and then disengage. If let's say you were practicing on getting an item from your puppy, even something they're allowed to have, I would make sure, let's say mid-chew, let's pretend he was over here enjoying his snack. I know he's a little tired, but let's pretend he's mid-chew. I would then go from there, say his name or a little kissy noise, and then go into a lovely find it in the opposite direction. I would do this several times where I would make it fun to take a breather from his chew or his item and then go grab that lovely stash of snacks off in the distance. Remember that if your puppy learns to let go of something without conflict and without feeling overwhelmed, If they know how to let go of something they can have, then they can let go of things they shouldn't have. But if drop it has started to turn into taking it away from them, then every time your puppy hears drop it, they understand it as mom and dad or whoever's nearby is going to swipe my thing. And then they might become more hesitant to have you near them when they have something they find valuable. Or even if they grab something they shouldn't, then you coming nearby equals the end of fun and sometimes conflict. So obviously he doesn't care about his chew right now, but we'll pretend I would have him do another little find it, get him to disengage. Then I could take my chew with no conflict and then take it away and save it for another session. So remember that if your pup, and I'll just plop it out of the way for now so we can play with it later, but if your pup is having moments where there are the beginning stages of resource guarding, it's a very normal dog behavior, but we don't want it to become worse by how we interact with them or by scolding the dog for showing what we've deemed a bad dog behavior. We might either make the behavior bigger and worse, or we might cause suppression of a behavior and then it comes out really big if they feel really frazzled. So remember, getting at the root cause of why is my puppy showing me these behaviors and how can I help them is much better than viewing behavior as good or bad. I like to think of behavior as communication. So this does not mean that I want my dog going and assaulting, random people or other dogs or other animals. But if my dog is saying, you know what, I'm feeling uncomfortable and they give me a little growl about something in the environment, I can then help them feel safe again. And that warning is something I want to keep. Dogs that have been, again, scolded out of behavior means that they might be a dog that gives very little warning for how they're feeling because it's been scolded, and now they give you right to bite. So we really don't want to create those zero dogs. We want a dog that feels very comfortable offering a lot of behavior, even if it is normal dog behavior or responses to the stimulus. So remember that if you're trying to build confidence in your dog, having a two-way street for communication is really important. Also, if you're not familiar with dog body language as well, I highly recommend checking out some of the resources I had sent along with the puppy class, but also I resent them along to all the doggy day school students. And in there's some wonderful resources on dog body language in the form of books or even visuals, diagrams. Because again, if we're unaware as what the puppy's saying at a low whisper, the only time we might actually listen or understand is when they've already started shouting. And by that point, then nobody's having a good day. And it could be, again, what your babe is getting really good at rehearsing. So remember, puppies do not grow out of behavior, they grow into behavior. So if your puppy is doing something you don't love, think, what would I rather? Or how can I help that puppy gain more confidence, more resilience, and maybe give them outlets that are appropriate versus the outlets he might be choosing on his own. So, but Mr. Z did a very nice job with a little bit of this loose leash walking and of course with some of this avoiding resource guarding down the road. So he's doing a really nice job. Good job, sir.